Hi, everyone, and welcome to our live event for Sisters Talk podcast. I'm Marie Robinson.
And I'm Charlene Lutz. And we are here today with three amazing women. We have Stires, Brooke Werley, and Janice Dilbeck. And we're going to get started with their stories. But just to introduce a bit, Stires is an educational consultant. She is primarily involved in helping people to get outside and just loving and being in outdoor spaces and learning from them. Brooke Werley is the creator of Emergence Gardens, and Janice Dilbeck is a life coach. So, we are going to talk today about how our stories and our journeys of being well and helping each other to be well and how they're connected. And we're going to start it off with just Janice telling us her story of how she got to the place she's at. And yeah. So, you want to kick us off, Janice?
Sure, I'd love to. And thanks for having me here. I was a national sales director for an international company, and I had been there for about 20 years. And at the end, as we were at 19 years and days and months. We had a meeting of the minds. They were merging with their next largest competitor, and they were looking for senior managers to step down. And I was sort of raised my hand for that because I wanted to see what else there was. And I loved what I was doing. It was a lot of team building and training and leadership and personal development and professional development. But in those 20 years, I was pretty much padding the bottom line for a large corporation, and I was missing the personal connection and seeing the real benefit day to day. So I took the first year off and just kind of wandered in the desert trying to figure out what my next job was. And as usually happens in these situations, it came to me. I didn't really find it. So a colleague of my husband's was working primarily with children, a child psychologist. And she came to me one day and said, I keep getting referrals for very introverted children because their parents think they're depressed. They're not depressed. They're just shy. And I'm not the best resource for them because I myself am an introvert and I don't have very good social skills. So I'd like to send this person over to you. Well, I had nothing organized for a practice, and I was still in my exploration stage. And I said, look, I will be happy to meet with this child and the family. And if I can help them, that's great. But I'm just going to do it, as a as an experiment. So I did. I met with them, and it was lovely senior in high school, smart. And we chatted for about an hour. And I said, Ben, what's the problem? And he said, well, I can talk to adults, but I can't talk to peers, and I can't talk to kids my own age. So I started meeting with Ben, and in a few months, he was having friends over to the house. He was eating lunch with his peers at school. Prior to that, he was eating in the janitor's closet at lunchtime by himself.
Wow.
He had never had a friend come to the house. And, fast forward, he took a friend to his senior prom. He went off to college, and it was a great success. So, needless to say, that referral source started to explode. And there were tons of kids out there who were just awkward. They were just socially awkward. And social media, of course, was not helping that situation because it was putting a manufactured pressure on them to be liked and to achieve, et cetera. And so for 3 years, I worked with kids. I never advertised. It just every week, two more clients came to me. I built a website And it was like, if you build it, they will come, and along they came. And
Mhm.
it was all word of mouth. And then it was Skype before it was Zoom, and it was all over the country. And so that went on until the pandemic. And during the pandemic, women that I had worked with in my corporate role were being displaced from their jobs as companies were failing and they were cutting back. And they asked if I would help them because it had been 20, 25 years since they had put a resume together, been in front of anyone to try and sell themselves in terms of skills and worthiness, and they were flat out terrified. So I shifted gears and went into career coaching. I still had the social skills business going on with the teens, but that was starting to slow down, and this was starting to explode just as a function of the pandemic and all the socioeconomic dynamics that went with that at the time. So that's what I've been doing now since 2020. And I work primarily with women in their 50s, some in their early 60s. Many of them are very financially insecure. They are underdeveloped skill wise. They are technology resistant. It's this is not easy, and I'm doing it for free. And I've been doing it for free since I started because they are in dire situations. Most of these ladies are um, barely keeping the lights on, so to speak.
Wow.
So it doesn't make sense. Career coaching is expensive. And I know because I purchased that service along the way in my career, and it was thousands of dollars. So I'm not charging them, but I did in the last 3 years put 24 women back to work. And I'm really proud of that. Um, it wasn't easy, and it continues to be difficult. This year, I said for sure, no ifs, ands, or buts, I'm retiring. And here I am. Because just as I said that, of course, along came two other clients, new this week, who had been dear friends and colleagues along the way who just happened to have lost their job. And it is it's taking 9 to 15 months to put a 50-year-old woman back to work,
Wow.
either in the role that she left or in something new um, that may or may not be related, but it's whatever I can sort of conceive a strategy for, and we can spin it, and I can coach someone to sell it and get them into the role. So that's my current story. It's taken on a life of its own. It's what started as a part-time gig is a 7-day a week deal. I am that person who keeps saying, I'll be right there. I'll be right there as I'm, closing out yet another email or another um, creative effort on behalf of one of my clients. That's my story. I'm
That's
an
just
advocate for women in the workplace.
so inspiring.
Yeah.
I love hearing that, just the work that you're doing and how impactful, you are being to the women that you have supported. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's
Well, thank
incredible.
you. It's it's kind of a love-hate thing now. I'm burned out from the effort, but I can't stop. And I don't what I'm trying to do is find people like myself who are or who either are retired or would be retired simply because of their age, and who have a retirement income that is sufficient to cover their needs, and who'd be willing to do something like this. And there isn't, I know there are lots of folks who could, and it's the suggestion's never been made, and it's just a matter of introducing the idea. of giving back and volunteering, but I can't scale to the size of the need.
Mm.
So that's my challenge right now.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, we'll be able to find someone and you'll be able to hand that off. That'd be great.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, it'll happen. Okay, so should we we'll bounce to Brooke and then Anne, and then we'll kind of have like a question and answer and overlap where we can talk more about sort of more of the interconnection. Does that sound?
I think, kind of some, what resonated with
Mhm.
each one of us hearing all of the stories,
Mhm.
because we're not all that closely connected. So this is great
Mhm.
learning about each other.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. All right, so Brooke.
I really love how already it's so visible how different all the stories are, and it really goes with your theme for this, how we're all connected despite it. And so when I'm thinking about my story, I don't know where to start either. It's also connected from the very beginning. And so I'll try to start as far back but as close to now as possible, and keep the through line. So my work, I created an organization a few years ago called Emergence Gardens, and my work is centered around connecting people back with our natural environment, specifically through growing food, sustenance, nourishment, as well as connecting with the body through somatic practice, specifically breathwork practices. And how did I come to this is such a long story that I did not, grow up on a farm. I did not grow up even with a garden. I think that my parents actually cut down the apple tree that was in our backyard because I walked around barefoot. Where we grew up was in a subdivision that had been an apple orchard, but then, they put in a bunch of houses in the 30s or 40s. And I went to school for journalism, and I graduated thinking that I would become a reporter. But it was just about the time that print newspapers were on decline. And even though I continued to write freelance here and there, I had to find a lot of odd jobs, and eventually heard about this thing called WWOOF. It's an acronym, WWOOF. It stands for Willing Workers on Organic Farms. And it's an opportunity for people who don't have a lot of money to travel to go trade their time for a space to stay. It's all over the world. I did it just in the southwest of the US and then in Mexico. But it's all over Europe, Asia, wherever you want to go. This is an opportunity that still exists for people. And for me, it was just an opportunity to travel. I had no idea it was going to change the trajectory of my life. But the first time I remember very distinctly the picture of the field, myself with a potato hoe scratching against the surface, the Sandia Mountains in the background, and just feeling this ancestral remembrance in my body that this is something that my ancestors have known for generations and generations, and think, okay, I want to do this. How do I do this? And so it took another year or so, and I became an apprentice on an organic farm in Massachusetts called Simple Gifts Farm out in Amherst, Mass, near where I went to school. And then moved up into the Northland in Vermont because, Massachusetts wasn't quite rustic enough. So I had to farm up in Vermont where I farmed in -20 or whatever we got down there. And that's where I met my husband, and we moved back to Massachusetts, where he's from, in 2013 to start our own farm. One of the biggest problems with beginning farmers who don't have access to farms is land access. So we were leasing land and lost our land tenure after a single season. And so it's 2014, we just left where we'd been living, and we're here in Massachusetts, and we don't know what we're going to do. I had found this passion for farming that I thought this is what I was supposed to do. And then I suddenly was faced with not being able to do it. So I found a position which ended up turning into a leadership position at OK USA Fruit, which is part of Equal Exchange. The organization has been around since, it's almost as old as me. I think it's 1 year younger than me, and which is I was born in 80. I think it was founded in 81. And so The organization is a fair trade company that works directly with democratically operated farmer cooperatives, both in Latin America and much of the global South. And so I found this space to sort of learn a lot about the way that our food system works. And even in this space where the organization is actively trying to work with a different model, is still falling into a lot of the same constraints that that other farmers in other places have. And it really got me thinking about where our food comes from and how directly, even more so than when I was a farmer myself, how our food system is really very, it's creating more of the disconnect with our food. And so at the same time, I'm still trying to figure out, oh, I want to be a farmer. I'm in this position. And it took a lot of push and pull for me to finally get this aha moment. I was out in the yard with our garden that I'd been working on. And I finally saw this vision in my head of not just a farm as in one big place of, 50, 60 acres, but as myself, as our garden connected like a rhizome. And if you don't know what a rhizome is, probably everyone does, but I'll just say a rhizome is kind of like mint. It's a root that's connected that pops up all over the place. And the root isn't just one plant, but it connects all over. And so I saw all of these gardens as part of this rhizome that is our food system, that could be our food system if we were more connected to our natural environment. And so it still took me a while. I was saying before the call, I gave 4 months notice at my job, which still didn't seem like enough. But and then I founded Emergence Gardens. During the time that I was working, it was almost 7 years working full time and with a comfortable salary. I was able to put in a lot of time to my personal work, which we don't have enough time to go through all the threads of this, but I'll just mention that because it is part of my business. And sometime in that space, I went through a lot of different types of healing work. And the one that really changed my trajectory the most was a specific type of breath work that I ended up having an opportunity to be trained in at pretty much the day after I gave notice at my job. An opportunity to be to go do the training popped up. And so I trained in that, and I also offer breathwork groups as part of my work. And for a while, I separated them out, and they felt very disparate. And more and more, I'm connecting them and not separating them at all, because it is all part of it. Our bodies are part of the earth, and we kind of look over that a lot, but they're literally built from the food that our mothers ate, that their mothers ate, that their mothers ate, and our bodies are created ourselves from that sustenance from the earth. So that's my story in brief. Hopefully I didn't talk too fast or too much, but
It's good.
No, that's amazing. I love your story. I love the generations piece. That just really resonates with me.
Yeah, I love how you are just really open to that kind of flow of things coming in and leaving and coming in. And maybe it wasn't always so easy for you when things were, happening, but
Right,
it sounds
moment,
like, it sounds like you were accepting of that. So yeah, really amazing. Okay, great. So Anne,
Let's
let's
hear
hear
it.
it. Yeah.
Wow, I'm just like letting those stories just resonate. There's so much intertwining already. So I too don't know where to begin, but I'll begin somewhere in the middle, maybe. I would say my biggest thread in my life has been nature connection. So I grew up on a small island off the coast here, which has a bridge, although in the summertime, I spent the whole summer, 3 months of that summer, every summer actually, for my childhood. And then I took over that program from my dad. He taught a program for a camp on that outer coast island. So I think of myself as an island girl growing up on the coast of Maine. And you can imagine just how it feels, devastation wise along the coast. over the last two very large storms that we've had. If you've seen anything in the news, just it really is as real as it looks. And it's, you know, particularly just having grown up here, I'm 47 and I've never seen anything like it. You know, we had big storms, big wind, big snowstorms, big tides, things like that, but nothing like it's been. So I think one of the things that I knew very, very early on as a child was just how important it was to do what we were doing. And it seems funny now to think like, oh, as an adult, did you really know? And I checked in with my family, like, is this real that I have these memories of just being so aware that it was really important to be barefoot all the time? Or you know, whatever the things were. And I feel very, very fortunate and privileged to have had a nature childhood. We grew food, and I asked my family, why don't you have a huge, well, they do now have a huge garden again, but they didn't for a while. And I was like, why don't you have a big garden? Like, we always had a garden, and all of the pieces and the preserving and all the things. And they were like, we had a garden because we had to, you know, and now, you know, now we don't have to. My parents are both teachers. And we grew up in a house that needed everything. There was not a furnace or anything like that. It was heated with wood. And I remember my mom cooking with her coat on. You know, it was not an easy scene for my family. I definitely had bread bags in my boots going to school because they were leaky. And there just wasn't, you know, we didn't go places. I could count on my hand, have the number of times we drove an hour away or something like that. It just didn't happen. We didn't go out to dinner, like none of that. Our world was small, and it was island based, and it was also community based. Everybody helped to get the firewood in. It was all that kind of connected way. And it was very obvious to me what happened in 20 years. Along the coast. Not only were the accents not as deep as they once were, but people weren't as connected anymore. So things like the general store on the island disappeared, or it changed owners many, many times, and then it was gone. And people were driving farther away. We all of a sudden, you know, weren't growing as much food. Their furnace came into the house. Like, I was so aware of these kind of things that started to disconnect. And my family was never disconnected from nature. That didn't happen. But I do think that there was this shift that started to happen along the coast. And there were more businesses, there were more houses being built. It was just starting to change quite a bit. And one of the things that happened that was very clear to me, I was in my early 20s probably, and the local schools did something, the small local schools that we all had in all the towns started to disappear, and they consolidated as they did across the country, right? So Marie knows all about this in terms of being a superintendent. Like, it's cheaper, you know, you consolidate the schools, it's cheaper, you know, you have the one central office, like all that stuff started to happen. But one of the things that it did was it ripped the heart out of these communities. So no longer did they have these small schools, which everyone, for better or worse, could rally around and go to the games and be a part of things, and the suppers would happen in the school and all those things. It really changed the dynamic of a town. So I realized that much as I didn't want to, like kicking and screaming, became a teacher. And my parents were like, what's wrong with it? So, you know, and I thought, I did not want to be a teacher. You know, we had no money. I had to share you with, like, I don't know how many other kids. You were always working. There was never, like, it was just busy all the time. It was either firewood we needed to get in, or, you know, you were grading papers or doing preparations for kids. And I was really aware of that. My sister and I were kind of alone all the time. You could call it neglect or awesome, you know, one or the other, in the woods by ourselves. But I think just looking ahead, I realized that that's where my skills really were. I was in my marine biology track, but I started teaching about natural history and marine biology, and people just were like, you teach, you know, it's just like so clear that was going to be the way my heart was shared with the world. So I started teaching, and I started teaching outside. So I was an environmental educator, and that's when I realized, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to feed myself or clothe myself if I stay as an environmental educator. I think the first year I made $4,500 a year. So just, you know, do that math. It wasn't that long ago. So I decided, well, I'll go make the big bucks and I'll go work in a school. But I became unwell working inside a building. So it was obvious to me that I could not be inside. So I started taking the children outside. And then I realized that I needed to read about this. What is this? What is this merging? There's got to be something here. And I was teaching young children at the time, so at a preschool. So it was easier to do that kind of thing. Although people really looked at me sideways, like, what, this crazy woman bringing these 3 and 4-year-olds outside in the rain or whatever else. But I came across a book, and it was called Beyond Ecophobia, Reclaiming the Heart in Nature Education. And it was written by David Sobel, and he has become my dear friend, but he's been a mentor and colleague of mine from Antioch University for years. And it was actually in Orion magazine. It was a series. It was called the Eco Literacy series, and it was just one of the 3 books. And I cried through the whole book. And he's like, "You are ridiculous." Now, of course, it was like one of his first books. And I was like, no, this is like, it was as though someone had just taken my heart and like put it out on a page. So it's a beautiful little book. And I said, well, I have to go work with this man. So I actually, and this is, I don't know if this is too much for a podcast, feel free to, delete it, but I will just say that I applied to graduate school, and then I didn't know I was pregnant. I don't know how somebody doesn't know they're 3 months pregnant, but I didn't. So I ended up in having a miscarriage, and it was really bad news. So I ended up 3 days in the hospital, and it was a very emotional time and a really big life event that I didn't know. I mean, it was sort of like, is she going to live? Is she not going to live? She just applied to graduate school. She really wants to go work with this person. And then I got out of the hospital, and I got a phone call, like as I walked in the door, the phone rang, and they were full. They didn't have a space for me. And David said, well, we just put your application at the top of the pile. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's not okay to do. But apparently that's what happened. And I entered graduate school 3 weeks later. I mean, it was just this kind of one of the divine things that happened. And working at Antioch, I've been working at Antioch as affiliate faculty for a dozen years, and I teach courses for them in the nature-based education program, certificate program. Now they have a master's program in nature-based education. But, that whole thing led to me starting a school. So I'll give this the tiniest little inch, which is that I started a school that was sort of dubbed the, little school that could, like the little blue engine that could. Because we just had to. It was just a great model of what actually is starting to happen around the country, which is a exciting prospect. But back then, this was now 15 years ago, I went to David and I said, I want to start this school. And yet I'm having these like really intense, like Freudian dreams of like being burned at the stake. And then the other ones were this amazing Mother Nature type figure, like putting light through my head and then into my body. And like, I was supposed to go do this stuff. And he said, well, I guess it's time to start a school. That's what he said. It's like, okay, what do we need to do? So he was on the board among other incredible risk-taking people. And we did. We started a school on my grandmother's property and put the school back into a town that lost its school with my aunt's class, who graduated from the one-room schoolhouse here. They didn't have a school here in this town in about 60 years. So it was a really beautiful, not easy project, but certainly did bring heart and people back to this town of 700 people. It was one of the oldest towns in the Mid-Coast, just in terms of retirement age people. And it brought families back to the town because it was a school choice town. So it meant that our school was 60% publicly funded. As a private school, it was a pretty amazing, accessible model for what could be. So that's kind of my little story. The school no longer exists because I moved on 12 years in. That was enough. And there's, a big story there, but my journey there is more around how do I now help and support others to have this work happen in the healthiest way possible. So I support schools around the country, mostly in Maine, to get children outside and connected. So that's what I do. That's a little bit of the story.
That's great. Wonderful.
It is. I loved hearing it. I never heard that whole
Yeah,
story.
I don't think I've ever heard that whole story either. So
There you go.
it's wonderful. Yeah. So I think we can open it up. I mean, I think we should just open it up for conversation and really some reflection and thinking, like what resonated with each of you about anyone's story, and just kind of let the conversation flow.
I just have one thing because I have so many things that went through, but just one tidbit, and that is that when Janice was talking, I just kept thinking about this moment in time when the school wasn't, and again, do a whole podcast on that, but when the school wasn't and I was shifting, it was reminding me a little bit too of what Brooke was saying, just this like, I'm like jumping off a cliff into what is there for me, as a 40, I don't know how old I was, early 40s woman, and thinking like, I am a single mom, like there isn't like magical support coming from anyone or anything. And I instantly went to something called Coastal Enterprises Incorporated and another organization that supports women specifically to shift, I mean, not just women, but one of their whole strands is to help women return and identify what they're excited about and how to do it. So business advice and technology advice and assistance with this or that or the other thing, and just beautiful, like essentially just the holding of the hand as
Yeah.
you transition or that you come out of, and recognizing that it's very different and often has a lot of emotion attached to it and self-worth and all those pieces. Not that it doesn't for men, but that there's a really specific support that's needed, and just really incredible. I mean, I remember asking my mom why she became a teacher. It's because she said, because I had three choices, it was 1970 or 1968 or whatever it was. So, three professional choices, nurse, secretary, and teacher. And I thought, my God. And then now it's like, we may have more choices, and yet there's still a lot of that is carried through. So I'm so appreciative of what you do, Janice. And I just wanted to say
Well,
that.
thank you. To build on what you're saying, it was very eye-opening for me to realize how many women are out there who are one alone, either by choice or by circumstance, divorce, death of a spouse, what have you, who were in no way prepared financially for their later years. There was no savings. It was just in and out. Many of them had adult children who were successful and who were unwilling to step in, or siblings, same situation. So, I felt like I spent an equal amount of time hugging and comforting as I did strategizing, because there was a real social work element to this. It wasn't just coaching. It was really trying to learn the system so I could manipulate it on their behalf. And I'm not shy. So, I was the right person to get in there. I I've been described as being like a dog with a bone on a mission. So, but I, I'm okay with that, because I recognize that if you're going to advocate for a person or a group, your voice needs to get above the fray. You need to be a little louder. You need to, attract some kind of attention, and not in an off-putting way. I have to build bridges on behalf of all of these women, and just society in general. You don't get ahead that way, but this is fascinating. I loved Anne's story. I loved Brooke's story. And I especially loved, I think Shar commented on it, when you said that you talked about how our bodies came from our mothers and their mothers and what they ate, and how this organic legacy of how we've creation and sustenance. And it's, my work is radically different from yours, or at least from where you've come from, and yet it was, what you were talking about was so natural and basic and fundamental to our existence and growth. This is really a cool idea, guys. This is so much fun.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
hope that I will promote this as to the best of my ability. So I have 5,000 connections on LinkedIn, give or take 100. And
Great.
I share this kind of stuff as much as I can without being annoying.
Well, I think it's so important, just hearing, Janice, your story, and Anne and Brooke, and knowing that it's really about, it's all intersecting to what? Wellness, right? Because we can't move forward. We can't, function in this world if we're not well. And, I think so much of at least, a lot of people are just functioning. They're on that treadmill of survival. And, back on one of our first podcasts, we shared a little bit more of our own stories, but, stepping off into that cliff, it's so funny because, when I left an unhealthy relationship back in, over 20 years ago now, it's so funny. And as you guys were talking about the cliff, I moved back home, I had 3 kids, and I'll never forget that, Shar gave me a card. I don't know if you remember that card. And it said, you're going to when you step into darkness, you're either going to walk on solid ground or you're going to fly.
Mm.
So it's just amazing how it's all connecting.
Yeah,
It is.
it is. And I love how each of you're all doing this different work in the world. And it's not so much as like, I don't know how to describe it. You're like leading people into it. You're not like forcing it down their throat. You're not telling them what to do. You're just like kind of laying out these tools, and they're taking what resonates with them, and then they're using it to help themselves. And I don't know. I think that's the only way we can offer
Inviting.
healing. Yeah,
It's kind of an invitation,
Yeah.
like creating the time, or creating or allocating the time and space for these things to happen. It sounds like is another intersection, or, connection among everyone.
Yeah, I love that you bring the breath work in with the gardening now, Brooke, because it is, I mean, it's so connected, right? I mean, and I know I've experienced this, and I'm sure other people have this complete disconnect from my stomach and my brain. I mean, like completely, like just falling apart, right? And that's just fascinating to me because I'm eating, the food's going in my stomach, and I'm not breathing, or I'm not connecting it as one thing. Like it's just, I'm still working it out in my head how it's all like, but you're on the right track with keeping it connected. I mean, it's huge. It's definitely huge.
I think what you were just saying too, how everything is just laying out. I know that what I'm doing isn't for everyone. I know that gardening isn't going to save everyone's life, and that work isn't either, but it's offering that open space for that spark of creativity to light in the person and say, oh, actually, what am I doing? Am I just surviving, or am I thriving? Am I vibrant? Am I really living here? I'm only here for how long, and am I living? And yeah, it doesn't have to be, with a garden or with a meditation or with art, but there are all of these different ways, and showing the world yourself, not even saying I'm here to help you, but just like, this is what I'm doing and this is what's working for me, can really be an inspiration. And I'm sure all of us have experienced that inspiration from others. And I mean, we're seeing it right now in ourselves, but just every time you see someone who's really in themselves and doing what they're passionate about, it inspires you to jump off the cliff, or fly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. We all have gifts that are different, but what we're lacking in many cases is empowerment. And that's what I'm trying to build, so that whether you're leading or gardening or meditating or educating, that you're doing it with a sense of worthiness that inspires others. And that's the deadening that happens when you feel lost or rejected or confused in your life. It's hard to have that empowerment pull you through, but that's what all this connection does. sharing these stories, seeing the spark. That's what that's the theme that the thread that's running through all of our sharing.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting part of this. And I just love to see it grow and have dozens of folks on Saturday night. What better way to spend Saturday
Right.
night?
Exactly.
You think about just the times that women have gotten together through history, whether it was to grind grain or is, in many, many cultures around the world, it's like there are circles of women who spend time doing this. Now it's akin to the wine and book groups or something. But there's
Yeah.
some, this knitting of stories is so vital for our survival. I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah.
people, but in particular, as people who identify as women, as we do on this call, I think there's that piece that's how we actually support each other, instead of doing what a lot of
Yeah.
communities have done. And I've experienced this, I'm sure all of you have, where, Marie and I talk about the alligators. It's like there's so much pain out there. And I think there's a lot of pain among women feeling disconnected. And so then a woman holding her self-worth and holding her empowerment and wanting to lift it up in others can sometimes receive, the opposite from other women. And I think this
Yeah.
is the way we want to be together. And actually one of the things that came out of some things that have happened in my life, particularly professionally with my school, was to see how important it was to support women's health, in this case, teachers' health, and not just women, but we know the statistics are such that early childhood and elementary teachers are predominantly people who identify as women, not all, but a lot, overwhelming. I think it's still in the 90%.
It's high. Yeah.
High. And so having a collection of women come together, there are 7 of us who come together and facilitate a wellness day for teachers, and it's funded. I found money to have it be funded. So then these incredible people, including Shar and Marie, help to run these amazing workshops all day, and we're just together and we're eating beautiful food. And that's an integral part to it. And breath work is also. And I think there's all these offerings, like where is your place where you can come into this and be supported? So.
And I think just to springboard off of the wellness retreats, that has been such a really impactful piece for me to be involved in. And just because, like I had shared a little bit before the podcast, that, I work a lot and I'm working on backing up from that and expanding to really living and connecting and being more, present with my own family. But I wasn't even paying attention to what was happening, and those wellness retreats, I mean, we've had people just welling up in tears because we have just, and it sounds so simple, but I think providing a space and taking care of each other as women, and actually there were a couple of men at that one, so it isn't always women, but it is again predominantly women, because oftentimes what are we doing, we're mothers, we're coordinating all of the events typically of a family. You may be a daughter, you may be a sister, you have so many roles, and then you're also in this professional realm, and especially when we think about early childhood educators, and not that every field has its challenges, but I think through the pandemic and all of that, it's just been increasingly challenging. But to witness that and to know that some women are struggling just to incorporate 15 minutes of exercise during the day. And I think it's just so important that we as women in our communities stop the pressure on the busyness, like, and there's a saying out there and I can't remember what it is, but it's like, like you're wearing this badge of honor because you're so busy. And it's I know I've stopped talking about that and I've shared that openly. I used to do the 4 a.m. wake up and I'd be on the treadmill by 4:30, and it's only been a year and a half, believe me, it's not been that long, but I don't set my alarm unless I absolutely have to anymore, because I was rushing to bed, rushing to get up, and I recognized that I was just stressing myself out in a ridiculous nature. So I just think this is just really, really powerful, and women need to hear. Everyone needs to hear it. It's just, you know, we need to take care of ourselves in whatever way that resonates with us and that works for us.
Yeah, definitely. You're making me think of How to Make an American Quilt.
Oh my God, that's the exact
Well,
movie when Anne was talking about the quilt. I was
That-
thinking of quilts.
Well, I
They're
know.
around the table. They're doing the
I
quilt.
had never seen the
I
movie.
can't even get over
And,
this.
and
So
one
much.
one day, Marie's like, "Are you going to watch How to Make an American Quilt?" And I'm like, "I've never even seen that."
Have
She's
you
like,
guys
Winona
seen it?
Ryder? And I'm like,
No, I
Oh,
don't.
yeah, you got
Well,
to say it.
you've got to watch
You
it.
gotta watch it.
It's
It's
amazing.
great. It's making me want to watch it.
I'm gonna
But-
watch it. I'm
But
gonna
we
watch
don't
it
do
again.
that, right?
No.
Like we are doing it right
Yeah.
now. We're doing it. We're How to Make an American Quilt. We're virtual,
Okay.
right? And we're not quilting, but
No.
we could be. I mean, we
Quilting.
could certainly
We're
be
virtual
doing
and we're not
something.
quilting, but we're
We could-
together.
We could be
But
doing
this
something.
is the idea that you have
It's
a,
the
a
beginning,
bunch,
right?
Yeah.
a bunch of people, I'm assuming women, and they're
Yeah.
quilting. And what happens is this exchange that grows into
The
something.
stories.
Yeah.
It's all
It's
the
the stories. They're telling the stories, and
Yeah.
it's the family. It's
It's-
ancestral too, because it's
yeah.
all the.
It's the
yeah,
generation.
the generation.
Yeah, it's great.
So I was thinking while Anne was talking, I was thinking about just how we do have so much pressure, and you said the word. It's the pressure. It's this need to constantly be doing. And one of the things that I love about the retreats, and I do sometimes struggle with the time because I want them all to be able to make more, and I just want to keep making. But it's not about that. It's about just laying the things out or offering all the ideas and then letting people take what they will. And it's this slowed down kind of space and time where it's like we're hanging in space and time. We're not worried about where we're going. We're not worried about who's thinking what. Like there's none of that. There's none of this judgment and criticism. And it's just about this flow and process. And I've really realized it for myself, because now I try to only do 3 things a day, which I'm super grateful for, right? Because I was never doing 3 things a day. I was worse than Marie. I was doing 50 things a day. And I leaped off the cliff, right? I really did leap, and I'm still like this some days. Like I'm just like I'm falling, I'm free falling with I'm waiting to belly flop sometimes, but I'm not, and I don't know. I mean, I think that we have to give ourselves the space. If we don't, we can't be well. We can't even start to think about wellness, not even for 10 minutes, if we're just going on the hamster wheel of striving and worrying and what's next and all that. So I think that what each of us is doing is creating a space, even if it's only for a little bit of time, for people to get there. And then it sits inside of them, and then they're ready to take it out in their way and integrate it into their lives, and then hopefully integrate it into the lives of the people that they meet. And that's the ripple, right?
Or
And
that they're connected to. Yeah, they have to meet them just in their families. But I have a question. I'm really curious, Brooke, about your business and how does that all work? Like, can you talk a little bit about what happens within your business and because it's interesting to me that the 2 different aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do, I have something that's marinating between something Anne shared and something you were just saying, Shar, that is tying together. And I don't know if I quite have the words around the thought yet, but I'm going to try to put it out there. As Anne was talking in the beginning about the town sort of coming apart and, the big places coming in, the little places going out, and how we've become disconnected. And then that started to stir an idea of how it was almost not necessary that those things happened, but they did happen, and they happened in these small ways in all of our communities, not just here. And then going back, and even going back, because a lot of my work is based in ancestry, and that's sort of how I came to the healing work, is through this ancestral healing piece. And these things have been happening for generations, where our communities and our ancestors of all backgrounds, I'm Northern European background, but many people who are either native to Turtle Island here, or people who were brought against their will to our places, and all of these communities that were broken apart. And now we have this sort of global invitation to bring those pieces back together and not separate into these little cliques and clans anymore, but to really integrate and see how we can all benefit and learn from the rich tapestry of not this thing's right or this thing's right or these people are wrong, but all kind of bring back together. And so that's sort of like an unexpected gift from this disconnection that's happened. And then when you were talking, Shar, about how these wellness retreats, I think you said the retreats, where you're bringing people together in these small pieces, and it started to click in my brain that these things that we do, and you did say, you bring back and integrate them into your life, but it's kind of like a model that you're creating. It's not that we're trying to say, oh, this is the place where you go to get well, but we will really want to bring that sense of belonging and oneness with everyone in the earth and community into everyone's being. So it's just our experience of life. It's not something that we have to escape from at all. And it can be, you can be a salesperson, driving business, but if you're doing it from this place where you're connected, then you're bound to just change the world that you live in and change it in a way that's going to benefit everyone because you're connected with them. Anyway, that was just an aside from what
I love that. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thanks for sharing that.
So the way that my business works is, and it's gone through a lot of, ideas and starts and stops, because there are a lot of aspects to it. I would say the core of the business is what I call the Earth and Air membership, which is a group membership. I started saying, okay, I want to help support people who don't know how to garden, because when I learned to farm, I was in my 20s. I had plenty of time to, work on a $600 a month stipend, and I didn't have kids. I didn't have to do any of that, but most people can't afford to do that now. And I wouldn't have known how to grow food if I didn't have that experience. So I wanted to offer that to that people, but in order to value my time, and because I don't have, a big savings, I do have to have be able to make a living from it, and for me to be able to value my time, it was just too much for people to be able to afford unless they had a lot of money. And I didn't want to just be offering my services to people who were well off and could afford it. And so I started a membership that offers the same thing, but we get to gather together. And at first I said, okay, this is going to be for 1 year. You commit to 11 months and we go through the whole season. And that seemed like a lot for people to commit to. I got a few people to sign up. And then I said, well, does it really have to be that? Do you really have to start at this point and end at this point? Or can we just continue and jump in where you jump in? And there isn't the pressure that you have to do it. So now it's a monthly thing, and people can drop in. It's totally virtual at this point. I do offer in-person things, but it's sort of just an add-on for people who are local. About 80% of the people are local to me, but I have had someone as far as British Columbia. I have a person out in Michigan. So, there are people here and there. It mostly works for people who are somewhere between zone, I'd say like 9 and 4. It makes the most sense for, but so I offer that. And initially too, I had separated the breath work. So I had that's the Earth membership, where we go through an entire season, sort of how to build a garden step by step. And I use no-till methods. And so transitioning essentially a cut grass lawn into a garden. And so we go through every step. It's a curriculum. It's $22 a month. And you can join whenever you want. So if you wanted to just watch it all, you could watch it all and get all you want for $22. And every so often I do offer, people free classes here and there. But so I had separated out the Earth part, and the air part, which the air, even though the earth and air are elements, the air was the breath work. And that was a monthly breath work group where it was a live breathwork group every month, and then you had the recordings if you couldn't make it. And the type of breathwork I facilitate is sort of it's not always an emotional release, but it really helps get in the body and process through emotions that are otherwise sort of stuck there. All the times we didn't have time to process it. I've heard people kind of compare it to when a deer gets hit by a car, they immediately just sort of shake it off. But we don't do that. We experience these traumas all day, every day, and we just hold it. And so we're holding all these things and we don't realize it. And we're crying for a reason that we don't understand, and this and that. So this process opens up a safe space where you can hold space for those emotions as they come through. And so I had separated that out. So you could do this, or you could do that, or you could do both. And I only just recently brought them back together as, you know, you can choose to only experience one or two, but it's just one thing, because we really, I feel that I couldn't separate out these pieces from my healing. The gardening work that I teach is not, you know, throw in the raised beds and spray the Roundup and call it a day. It really do go into taking notice of you know, your more than human neighbors. And it's important when you're gardening, because if you don't know that you've got a bunch of squirrels, then you might not know that they're going to eat your corn in a couple of months. So it is all relevant, but that's sort of how it works. So people can join the group. And then I also have an acre market garden where I bring produce to market and connect with people in that way, and try to share the message that food and gardening isn't just this thing where you pick it up at the store and the package is already mashed and you eat the potatoes, but that there actually is a story behind it, and hopefully inspire people to think about what the story is behind the things that are nourishing them.
Brooke, how do you
Welcome.
promote your business outside of the local community?
So right now I'm just on social media. I think I've been soft launching now for several years, and I've been called out on it for a couple times. I thought about taking there's a really excellent organization near us called E4All, Entrepreneurship for All. That's a free business starter, and so I had a call with them, and I said, you're right, I am playing small. So right now I'm letting it happen organically, because I feel like that's the most gentle way for me to do it. Yeah, I've tried a couple. I'm not a marketing pro, so I haven't done much outside of that, but just within the local community, and then just sharing on different forums here and there.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm open to tips.
Well, your posts always look amazing. I love looking at all your stuff, and reading your writing too is beautiful. So I'm glad that you are promoting it in that way, and that at least I love seeing it. So thank you for sure. Yeah. Wow. So many
As
things.
she was
Yeah.
talking about the breath work, I was, that's why I was asking the question of how do you promote, because your example of the deer struck a chord. So I had, apropos of nothing, I was the victim of many car accidents, of being hit as opposed to hitting other people. And a lot of it happened on, like, you know, big highways and things like that. So over a period of years, I developed this driving panic, which is, I think, what you were talking about, where you just keep, you know, assimilating the trauma and pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down. So it got to the point where I would, as soon as I would pick up the keys, the symptoms would start. And as I would get in the door, they would increase. And as I, you know, started the ignition, they were in full bloom. And it was like years of trying to undo that.
Wow.
So I've been trying to meditate most of my adult life, but in earnest the last 10 years. And I have a bad case of busy brain. And So I'm interested in your breath work, which we can talk about offline, because I think I'd be someone who might really benefit from
Yeah.
mastering that. And because you're right, that trauma, I think we all know this, it doesn't, from Anne's experience with miscarriage and that, all of that, it doesn't go anywhere. It's in our bones and tissues, and it's our health and wellness is so integrated in mind and body. And
Yeah.
so I think, you know,
That's just
I have a
making,
question. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that that's making me think about the book, The Body Keeps the Score,
Mhm.
and how powerful that is. And that was something that I didn't know about. I forget how I learned about
gave
that.
it
I
to
know you told me, but multiple people did. You were probably the first, I'm sure.
I think Janice has my copy. Do you have
we
my
go-
copy right now? I think Janice.
no, you asked,
Did I ask you that before?
I think I gave it back to you, but it's, you're missing it.
I don't
It's
have
fine. I know it by heart pretty much. I read it like 5 times. I love that. It's like my, I don't know, my Bible.
it.
I don't know. I read it a lot, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, Brooke, about so when you do the breath work, do you do anything with like sound? Because I've read a lot, and I know this has always helped me. So one of the things that I have done and still do on occasion is I will like yell, like I'll have to go out in the woods and I will like scream things out, like they will come out of me in like a really loud way. Like if I get super upset about something, that seems to be my release. Like it's reminds me of like a thing of like a dog shaking or something. But I noticed the last time I did it, which was not too long ago, I really felt way better afterwards. Like it really was super impactful. And I don't know why exactly, but it just felt different.
You're just making me think about something that we talk about a lot, is like how we hold on to things. And we talk just each other about the things that are going on around us, and there might be other people involved and they've gotten over whatever happened,
All the time.
and we are still like processing and thinking about it. And I don't know if it's a woman thing, because what are we taught, right? To be quiet and controlled and compliant and happy and
Make
and
everybody
we're
else happy.
and we're never able to have those big emotions without being characterized as probably crazy. I mean, if we're really being honest, but certainly some kind of an aggressive crazy person. And
Right.
I wonder if that feels like it's probably connected.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I agree.
Is
You
that
gonna
part of
ask
it,
that
Brooke?
question?
Yeah, I asked her if that
Yeah,
was part of it.
so yeah, I can answer that question. And then there's also, something that's coming up, just to respond to what we're talking about, connecting it to the, so if you ever look at like a anatomy of the larynx and like female anatomy, you just look at a picture and they're almost identical. If you look at the anatomy, and so those centers are really connected. And it's so funny because Anne said, the image of the light coming through your head and the mother thing. I'm gonna try not to go off on every tangent, but I just want to show this because I pulled a little oracle card. I don't do oracle readings. I just like them. They're fun for me. And before, I'm gonna hold this up. The one that I pulled today is this one here. I don't know if you can see it, but it says mother.
Uh-huh.
It's blurry, but it says mother.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really nice, it's coming in. But yes, sound is a big part of my work, and it's a really big part of the breath work, especially one-on-ones. I feel like groups are a little different because it's not really common in my area. When you go to a group that everyone is used to it, people are shouting and screaming the whole time, but it's about release. We're letting it out, and sometimes you have to let it out of and sometimes even I just encourage people to even just chuckle and do a fake laugh, because sometimes people feel uncomfortable even in a safe space making that kind of noise. And I remember the first time I was in college when I did what I would refer to as like a primal scream. I went up behind the dorms, like behind a tree, and was just like, but that was a kind of I was just so frustrated and I was just letting it out and I couldn't hold it anymore. Whereas what we're doing in the breath work is we're creating a safe space where you're feeling comfortable in your body and you're able to release that and actually let it go, instead of it just being like, I'm so bottled up and I can't hold it anymore, so I'm releasing it. You're actually you feel like you're in a really safe space. It's regulating. It's not a calm type of breath work where it's not the hyperventilating kind of breath work either, but we just use a very central rhythm that continues and that holds your space. And as Janice was saying, you have a hard time taking your brain offline. It helps take your brain offline, whereas other types of meditation, you kind of get stuck in your brain. Just focusing, it's almost like the breath is a mantra and you follow it. And so you're using your own sound. And then we're doing the breathwork to music, and depending on what the group is based on, it can either be really gentle, sort of, meditation music, or it can be sort of top 40 even, because those kind of songs will bring the emotions that need to come in and be released, it's really one of my favorite parts.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
When you're just talking about that, with that whole emotional release, I'm kind of going back to Anne and her school. I was fortunate enough to visit. And I remember when I was doing all kinds of research around nature and learning, and really trying to promote outdoor learning at my district, which is, really embracing it in a lot of ways right now. But we made a visit to and school. And I think, one thing that really resonated with me and what I've seen as we've done this in our district is that kids get that release when they're outside. And, when we take these, young children particularly, and we want to sit them in a chair and we want them to be still and not really use their bodies, and we want them to be quiet and listen, that we're really doing that to them, right? We're not allowing that emotional or even physical, that energetic release. And that's so much of what they got. I mean, I remember going to visit, and there were so many just beautiful places. And I was actually just going through my photos earlier today, and I came across all the photos from when I visited. And you have the beautiful yurts and
The spaces are
all of the
incredible.
outdoor spaces. Yeah. And
They're
it's just incredible. And I think that's another piece that we have to think about our youth, right? Because, how do women get to a certain age or anyone get to a certain age when, this becomes a thing? Well, it's built. It happens over years and years and years. So, and that's one thing that, connects Anne and I professionally is, we want to revolutionize public education to say, what, learning doesn't happen in this box. It happens everywhere, and it should expand beyond the walls of the school. So I just see another connection to wellness and, how we're giving back to the world. And, that our bodies are not meant to be still. I mean, even now, as adults, they're just,
Well,
they're just
and
not.
Anne, you knew that in your early 20s, you said, when you tried to go in and teach inside, and you actually became sick, right? And realized that four walls were not benefiting you. How could they possibly be benefiting tiny bodies, right? I mean, and
Yeah. Well, and you think now I'm doing a one part of my work is kind of really looking at climate education for very young children and communities. And what does it look like to have the first 1,000 days? We're talking about like 0 to 3, like the first, like those initial, that is like an ancestral. No, I mean, then that's a whole other question, right? That obviously we're talking about a little bit on this call, but the 0 to 3s, I mean, for me, I've focused so much of the 3 to 8 years old has kind of been, those are my people, I often say. And now I'm like, whoa, we're actually the 0 to 3s in those first 1,000 days those are the ones who are the most impacted on the planet are those beings. And the most fragile time, really. And that's where we can make the most difference also. And nature education, obviously climate education for young children, we're not like teaching children about weather patterns when they're 2, it's about jumping off logs and about hugging trees and touching things and being in their bodies and learning how to breathe and, all those pieces. So and holding worms and, you know, doing the pieces that get them to love, really. So yeah, it's
And when you're saying that, the birth to three just comes right back to the mother, right? Because, you know, how does a child's first 1,000 days become the richest experience that it can be? Well, when we support the mother, right? When we, you know,
Right.
provide that time and space to, you know, allow them to be their best selves. Yeah, it's just again, it's just so connected, everything.
Yeah.
Very connected.
It was beautiful when I came to Katahdin that first time to the elementary school and talked with, really, I talked with a couple of grandmothers there, and they were concerned about their grandchildren and just wanting them. Were so excited to see things like the orchard happening at the school, or the gardening, or the getting outside and doing the things that they felt like was so important for children to be doing. So I really, yeah, I think it's powerful to just see that kind of return in a community that actually was, you know, built, at least post colonization and contact, built around agriculture. So really returning to some of that connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
You answered, I was just going to ask you what I think you just answered. So I have a son who's an elementary educator, and he is the token guy walking around in the sea of estrogen otherwise. Right. So, but he and I talk about education every day, and it's one of my hot buttons. And he talks about the political limits of public curricula. And, you know, he tends, not unlike his mother, to kind of bend every rule, not quite break them, but just put a different shape to it. And what you did, and obviously what Marie, what your work is together is really so groundbreaking. Was it hard to sell it to the community, or because I would you're in a very rural place.
Do you mean
And
me or Anne?
well, actually, both of you, anybody could jump in. I guess I'm really directing it first to Anne because she's built a school,
Mhm.
right? And
Um, yeah,
was there a lot of opposition to that idea, or did they love the creativity of it and sort of welcome you in?
so both, and, you know, as with
Yeah.
anything new, it's terrifying for some and incredible and like a gift for others. And then they get there and they're like, what about the things we were used to seeing when we were in school, right? Even if they want it, you know, for their child. So it took a lot of time and education, and also recognizing that it isn't the right thing for everyone at that time too, right? They're gonna just I spent a lot of time like trying to be Gumby or holding on really tight, like it has to be this and this is the only way. You know, I finally got to a place probably 6 or 7 years in, and I said, just to a family who were like, we're looking, they've been at the school for 6 years or something. We're thinking we're going to go look at some other schools. We're just not sure. And we have these questions as he gets older, all these things. I said, go spend your time. Look at every single one. I gave them a list of all the schools to go to, public schools and some other local schools, different things. And they did, and they came back and they said, oh, you know, actually, this is what we really want, even though there are these things that they questions about, and is it going to be like this? And we were making it up. I mean, it wasn't like there was some model to go on. And there isn't in any school, you know, as much as we want to say, oh, public education is all the same, it is so different. And it's so different every year.
Mhm.
The constructs and the different sort of, you know, teachers that are there make up the makeup of the student body. Everybody's just different. You know, it's a living, breathing system. And thinking about how we can respond based on what we're seeing is like breathing, instead of like, it's got to be this way. And we're all like, you know, and a lot of the teachers who will come to this wellness retreat often say, I have been breathing from here up. You know, if you think about like everyone's bracing in a system that actually is educating and is supposed to be this woven system that's supposed to be healthy and wonderful for our kids. But if everyone is like then
Yeah.
we're not actually able to have something that is healthy for them. So I love the idea of bending rules. I bend them all the time. I try not to break them because I just do it like this. So I kept saying, I had a dear friend who came to the school with his young daughters at the time, and he's somebody that I went to school with his brother, and he came to the school, and he's like 10th or 11th generation Mainer here on the coast, and I said, and I'm not going to say his name, but I said to this person, I was like, why, because it was sort of like diehard public education, definitely committed to the schools, all this stuff. Why are you coming here, to think about this? He said, well, I read the article in the paper. As far as I could tell, this is the way all schools should be. And I think, this is like, and he's like, and this is like the schools we went to school, like when we were in school, this is what they were like. And it's true on some level. There's a lot of that. Piece. So there was both. I mean, there was both. There were a lot of questioning, a lot of, us sort of figuring out ways to talk about things and show people what we were doing. And we did a lot of pulling teachers from all kinds of schools to the school and families so that they could learn about what we were doing. But it wasn't, it was certainly not an easy road because it's new. It was
No,
new, even though
absolutely.
it's so ancient, actually, that way of like being in community while being in connection to nature is not new. And it's, it's the way people are taught all around the world. So anyway, I don't know what you might say, Marie, but that's what I would
Well,
say.
I would just I think definitely, it's always a challenge. And the rule breaking, yeah, nothing changes if we don't disrupt. And I love to disrupt things and really try to make people think, particularly in education, because we've gotten away from the point. The point is to learn and to hopefully develop and support children towards a healthy and sustainable life so that they can become productive citizens. But through my journey, it was still is. It's a challenge. It's not for everyone. It's about finding that balance. How do you meet standards, but also take them outside? Some people think it's one or the other, but it's actually both. So we've just, been plodding away year after year. This is year 8. There are still some people that don't see it. They don't understand it. But we just keep going because we hear the stories, when I see a young child and they're out and about and just being free and connecting, and I hear from teachers like, wow, this child really just came out of their shell, and we were out in the forest and they wrote more than they ever write in the classroom. That's all I have to hear to know that there's no way that it should not be, it shouldn't not be a part of where kids spend the majority of their time, and the majority of the children in our country, I think it's the majority of our children, they're in public schools, and
Yes, I
they
agree.
need a healthy environment that supports them as whole people, not just come in and sit down and do this worksheet. We can't keep doing that. It's just not healthy. Not healthy. So I'm just noticing our time.
You're just making me miss second grade, teaching second grade a tiny bit when you were talking. Just a tiny bit. I was missing it a little bit. But their spaces there are amazing, as is Anne's at her
You can always check out our website,
Yeah.
rsu89.org. I'll just put that little plug in.
Yeah.
We also have an organization, Katahdin Children and Families Foundation, which allows also for kids to be outdoors. I think it's absolutely necessary, but I think we have to wrap up.
I know. We
Yeah.
do. We do. This was so great.
Wow, this flew.
It did.
Yeah.
It's almost 8:00.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you guys all so much for coming in and talking and sharing your stories. And I think the biggest takeaway for me is just everyone is so connected, right? And we do need to create these spaces where we can allow the stories to unfold. And that's what happened tonight.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to make it known, I don't know that it was obvious from the start, but Janice and Brooke and Anne have never met each other until tonight. And wow.
And Janice hopped on at this. I didn't even text you and ask you.
I had no idea that you were going to put me on the spot. I thought I was coming to listen. So, all of a sudden, Shelly just said, well, so here's the mic. And, but you asked the right person to do that, obviously. So
Well, thank you. Are there any last final,
hmm.
words that each of you want to share?
I just want to say this is like a weaving, it's so long overdue. And in my work now, you said, children deserve this sort of healthy environment in which they are growing up and living. And um, I want to have a planet in which humans can do that. And I think there isn't the times now for all of this kind of weaving, for all of this kind of health. And so I'm just grateful to have these conversations and to hear about what people are doing in their own environments and own communities that bring that about, because we need it and we need it now.
Definitely. Thanks.
Yeah, it's been so inspiring hearing everyone reflect and talk about their work, and hearing about this is just 5 people who are doing things out there, and to think about how many more people are doing things like this, and the stories that we don't hear, and they're so needed because they're inspiring and it's out there, and we are all creating this together. And I just want to thank you all for your inspiration. Sometimes it can feel lonely out there, but
Well, thank you. Thank you.
For sure.
Well, my closing statement is we are enough. And I think we are all in our own way helping other people to feel that way about themselves.
Yeah,
Great.
definitely.
Well, thanks again, everyone. We really appreciate this. And I'm going to end our recording.